Hello, welcome back to the British Food History Podcast. I am your host, Neil Buttery, food historian and chef. In this episode, I am speaking with fish and seafood cookery expert CJ Jackson, author of The Great British Seafood Revival. It's a cookbook and travelogue with amazing photography from Steve Lee. But before we go on, Season 10 of the British Food History Podcast is sponsored by Netherton Foundry. Netherton Foundry are producers of top-quality British-made cookery equipment nestled in rural South Shropshire. Netherton Foundry are headed by Neil and Sue Curry, who take inspiration from the local ironmasters of the 18th and 19th centuries to craft traditional cookware from iron, oak and copper using non-toxic materials. And their cookware is built to last, whether it be their famous prospector pans, of which I am a proud owner, or their crumpet rings, or even their impressive range of outdoor cookware. Netherton Foundry ships to several countries outside of the UK, including the USA, so why not visit netherton-foundry.co.uk to find out more about their wonderful products approved not just by me, but by folks such as Tom Parker Bowles, Diana Henry and Nigella Lawson. Okay, let's get cracking. Yes, I am talking with CJ Jackson, cookery writer, teacher, and fish and seafood ambassador. CJ has been the director of Billingsgate School since 2005, situated at the famous Billingsgate Market in London, but she's also taught at the Cod and Blue Cookery School and Leith's School of Food and Wine in London. She's also the author of Leith's Fish Bible, which is how I personally discovered CJ and her recipes. In short, she knows her stuff. Her new book, The Great British Seafood Revival, published by Merlin Unwin, aims to kickstart a revival in the nation's buying and cooking of sustainable fish, with an emphasis on the more unusual or lesser used species. We used to eat a huge variety of fish and seafood, but we don't so much today. So obviously I wanted to talk to her about that. But tapping into CJ's knowledge is also excellent for anybody who likes to cook recipes from old cookery books or pamphlets, because many of the fish appear in those books. Most of us, anyway, might not cook at all or very often, so CJ's advice is essential to the historical cook. We talk about cod alternatives like coley and hake, the loss of the high street fishmonger, sustainability, fish farms and whether they're a good thing, the future of Billingsgate Market, and my old fear of bivalves, amongst many other things. Those listening to the Secret Podcast get some bonus material where we talk about the resurgence in the popularity of seaweed, and also disco scallops. But now, please enjoy British Fish and Seafood with CJ Jackson. Hello, CJ. Welcome to the British Food History Podcast. I'm very excited to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too, Neil. Thank you very much for inviting me to do this.
Well, we're going to be talking about your book, The Great British Seafood Revival. But before we get going, I've been a big fan of your Leith's Fish Bible for absolutely ages. It's very dog-eared.
Yes, well, that was published 30 years ago last year. It's a long time ago.
Really?
Now.
Gosh. Well, it's an amazing book. And this is an amazing book too. It's such a beautiful book.
It's absolutely stunning, made like that because of Steve Lee's photography. He's a great friend of mine, and he just sat down and said, "Oh, should we do a fish book? Let's do it together." And he said, "I've got just a publisher." So he put me in contact with Merlin Unwin. We were just having Sunday lunch together, and he just suggested it. And Steve's done a couple of books on game, which are absolutely stunning. And I just really like the idea. So we had a really self-indulgent year in 2026. Wrong year, 2025. We started this time last year. We had 9 months to go around the country, take the photographs, interview the people, me create the recipes, take the photographs, cook the recipes, take the photographs of those, get it all written and sent over to the fabulous Merlin Unwin. It was Karen Unwin who was the editing. She was the one that commissioned it. And it all was finished by August. So it was a big, big year for us. Very self-indulgent, and we had a fantastic time doing it.
Oh, it's amazing. And the great thing is it's obviously a cookery book, but it's more than just a cookery book. It's showing you all the different stages The people that you've met, and there are people doing so much hard work behind the scenes that you don't normally see. Those block men working so hard.
It's cold and they work long hours. So it's a tough job, but lovely people. It's such a skill to actually cut fish. It's like watching somebody carve butter, and a sharp knife and knowledge. They just do it so easily. And it's actually quite an easy thing to learn. It's just repetitive and constantly having a go, but it's not difficult. So it just requires skill and a bit of creativity.
I mean, even when I'm in my local fishmonger, I'm watching them fillet the fish and things like that. There's something slightly mesmerising and satisfying about watching people with a skill, just doing their skill.
Absolutely. I did a film, a video in here a couple of weeks ago to encourage young people to come into the industry. And I was watching a blockman who cuts fish for a living, and it was just magical. It is watching somebody that's so good at something. It's like watching somebody play the piano or play a musical instrument where they're really capable of doing it. So it's fantastic.
Now, CJ, it's often remarked that for an island nation, the British don't really like fish. And then when we do, it's a very limited amount. The big five, they call them, don't they? What is it? Cod, haddock?
Salmon, tuna, normally in a can, and prawns. And I think, those are readily available. I think people feel most comfortable cooking them. And certainly with cod and haddock, we love our fish and chips, and those feature very highly in the fish and chips. The large amount of fish and chip shops there are around the UK. What would be great is to get people to try other things. And 100 years ago, we were utilising so many different fish, but we've sort of lost the taste for it, I suppose. I think if you give somebody a new fish, they're so nervous about cooking it. All ingredients now, all protein's quite expensive. It doesn't have to be with fish. And I think people just don't have have the sort of the skills and the confidence. It's getting the confidence to cook something properly. And fish is very easy to overcook. It takes so little time. So the big focus for me was to go out and to try look at one of the fish we land and watching it being packed up and sent abroad, because 80% of the fish we land in the UK is sold abroad. And we import.
It's crazy,
80%.
isn't it?
It is crazy. But, love cod and haddock. We're getting it great quantity, great quality from Iceland, the Faroes and Norway. A lot of that product comes in from there. And it comes into Grimsby, where it gets auctioned off. And that then fills the deep fat frying baskets around the UK, particularly on a Friday night. And there's nothing wrong with it. But it would be lovely to just look at one or two other things and challenge people to just even try something. 2 or 3 new fish a year would be great. And it supports the industry. So when Steve and I originally decided to consider doing the book, it was his idea. We decided we'd go off and traipse around the country. You know, I'm based at Billingsgate Market. And I have been for nearly 25 years. But I see a lot of product coming into the market. I wanted to go back to source and see where it actually came from. And I think, we headed off to all these different big ports like Newlyn and Peterhead, smaller ports, smaller markets like Fleetwood, which is in Lancashire, and then smaller fishing ports like Tarbert over on the west coast of Scotland. And the constant chatter from all these people that catch the fish and land it is great for them to sell it abroad, but actually they'd love to see us use more of it in the UK. They do very well selling their fish abroad, but it would just be great to get people to try a little bit more. And it's getting worse and worse. I just think it's just going to end up, not trying new things. And I think I do a lot of work with children, and those kids have no idea. I mean, because a lot of major retailers now don't sell wet fish on a wet fish counter, they're just getting little packs of cod and haddock. So it's really trying to sort of instill a little bit more knowledge about what's available and encouraging people to try it. And there's some very, very simple recipes in the book to encourage people to think, yeah, I could do that. It's not a difficult recipe. And that's the key thing, is not making it too chefy, which is lovely, great to go out and be treated, but being able to cook something easily at home.
No, absolutely. And it's sometimes a matter of just a couple of minutes. In these days where energy costs a lot of money, makes good sense to cook some fish that just takes 3 minutes or something, 4 minutes.
We use an air fryer, and we go out to some schools. I've got funding at the moment to go out to some schools in Essex Way and East London, and we take an air fryer and put little fish cakes in the air fryer, and they're done in 7 or 8 minutes, and off they go. So it doesn't take long to cook. It's just working out how we can give people more confidence to try it and feel confident and think, yeah, okay, I like cod and haddock. let's try something else. Let's try coley or pollock. I think people have got a better understanding of pollock. Hake's another one I'd love to see people try. Somebody like Aldi, they now have a hake dish in their ready meals. So there's things out there. It's just encouraging people to taste it.
Yes. I mean, it's one of those things where, I used to be one of those people who didn't really cook fish very often, but I've remedied that now. I also used to be very worried about any kind of bivalve, mussels and oysters and things like that. And when you go into a fishmonger, with the amazing variety that they have, it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're not versed to it. But fishmongers are great because they'll give you advice.
They will. Do you eat mussels and things now?
I do, yes.
Well, what would put you off wanting to try it as a matter of interest?
Well, as a family, we didn't eat them. So it just wasn't part of the family culture.
Yeah.
And they're so alien looking. There's nothing that you can you go, oh, I can recognize that as a bit of arm or leg or whatever. It's just this seeming sort of amorphous, weird blob thing. So I was just put off. And then I tried mussels. When it came to oysters, I made a steak, kidney and oyster pudding, a Victorian recipe.
Excellent.
And I was very worried about cooking these oysters, but I was doing it because I thought it's a historically important dish for the British. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what have I been missing out on? It was delicious. So that was me in there. It's like, okay, fine.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Pudsey, which is in West Yorkshire.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of the issues we're finding is that if children are not introduced to it at an early age, they're not keen to try it. And it's getting worse and worse at it. So trying to encourage people to start early is really key. And once we have brilliant supplies of oysters and mussels and clams caught around the UK coast. They're so clean and so safe to eat. There's lots of rules and regulations. So you can never be worried about trying them. But interesting about your pie with it used to be smoked oysters going into that pie. And one of the sort of things for my book was I was looking back at what they were cooking with McFishery. McFisheries was the high street fishmonger that started up just after the First World War, and it closed in the 1970s. But they had a yearbook, and I've got a couple of the yearbooks that belong to my grandmother, and in there is a recipe for every single day of the week. Some of it's a bit of poultry and game, but predominantly it's fish. So you get not hugely enticing. I think the English cook used to cook, not now, I suspect, because we're so involved with other countries, and we have so much travelling now. But people were very, very simple, and some of the recipes in there are a bit grim. But there are also some great things in there, and it goes back to the 1930s. One of my recipes in the book is a stuffed megrim. Have you ever tasted megrim? Well, megrim is also sold now as Cornish sole, and it's because people go, megrim, never heard of it. But if you say something is Cornish sole, they go, oh yes, sole, it must be good because it's got a sole as a word and a name for a fish, got good reputation. But in the 90s, they used to take megrim and they used to make a little pocket. So you've got a flat fish, and then what you do is you peel the fillet back so you can actually see the bone, and they put a stuffing in there. And I do that all the time in the school. So you cook it on the bone, you take the head off and trim it, and then you put a stuffing. And I do things like cherry tomatoes and basil. But back in the 1930s, they made a fabulous stuffing using breadcrumbs, a little bit of butter and a bit of egg, and then tomato ketchup. And I was really sniffy about it, thinking, oh, tomato ketchup. But actually, it tastes delicious. And what a great way to get kids to try fish. If you've made a nice little crumb of tomato ketchup and crumb and butter on your fish, that's going to go down straight away. So I was inspired by that. And they were so much better about eating fish sort of 80, 90 years ago, 100 years ago. We just lost the trend for it, I think.
No, indeed. And well, the other thing that people are worried about these days, and we talked about cod and haddock there, people are very worried about the sustainability side of eating fish. I'd say that's particularly with cod. But you mention in the book that, that's not something that we should be worried about, really.
Well, I think sustainability is really important, but I think the people that need to worry about it are the people that are buying it and selling it rather than the consumer. It's hugely emotive subject. It's very complex, and there are some very good stocks of cod and haddock you also get the marine accreditation. But I think that if you go to a fishmonger and say, have you got something that's got MSC accreditation, they'll tell you straight away, they'll know exactly what it is. And you can also, ask a fishmonger about the sustainability of their product. And I think that I think we should eat fish not fearing that. I think we're much better to try fish. It's not as if we're eating it three meals a day. We might eat it, we're encouraged to eat it twice a week. I'm aware of it, but I think I'm very aware of it, but I think there's good stocks of all these things, as I say, particularly up in Iceland. And when stocks decrease, when I say it's an emotive subject, it's not necessarily that it's been overfished. There's a lot of influence from things like global warming. So if we see a temperature in the sea, cod, as an example, likes cold water. And if it just warms a little bit, it heads further north. It's also looking for its food. So if the food it's after is in a different area, it will move to a different area. So I think that we should take a lot of certainly in the UK, I think there's a lot of restrictions about what people can do. We've got the quota system as well. But for me, it's all about varying it, so I reckon you could probably have a different fish every week from around the UK and not repeat it twice, actually. There's so many different fish.
Yes, and I suppose it's not like a particular species is necessarily off the cards. It's the way it's being caught, I suppose, is the thing you got to look out for.
Yes, absolutely. There are some methods of fishing that are more user-friendly, I suppose. Looking at scallops, they hand dive for those rather than dredging. Dredging is a high-impact method of fishing, but it's not all bad. And I think there's a lot of people that get on the bandwagon and, we mustn't eat this and we mustn't eat that. And I think it's just a pretty good excuse not to eat more fish. And yes, it's a tricky one.
Rope-grown mussels are ones that are often, it's one of those ones where mussels are touted as being the most sustainable source of protein that there is on the planet because it's just such a passive process.
Absolutely. And of course, when a farmer is rope growing, they don't need to interact with the mussels at all. They're on a rope, they're in the water. They naturally feed on the nutrients in the water, so they're cleaning the water. They grow fairly quickly. They're very inexpensive. They're right at the bottom of the food chain. And they are absolutely packed with nutrients, lots of magnesium. They're low fat. They're really, really keen. And there's a few people going around the UK at the moment taking mussels into schools in order to get kids to try them. I had some children in here recently and they look at them like they're some alien thing. I had a little girl that looked at them and said, CJ, it's alive. And I said, well, it is alive because you need to cook them from live. And she said, I saw its lips move. And of course, she was watching the shells open. She referred to those as lips, which appealed to me. But they are absolutely brilliant. They're not expensive. And at 1 kilo is easily going to feed 2 people. And there's so many other different flavours you can add to it. I cook them, steam them, do a sauce, and then just pull them out and toss them into pasta. It's such a simple dish and low fat and packed full of protein.
Yes, and if I remember rightly, in your book, there's a good recipe. It's like moule marinaire, but you've used whiskey instead of wine, which I liked.
And I use whiskey because of the connection. I did a little work with a chap who works up in the Shetlands, and he's a mussel farmer up there. And I thought, how appropriate to do mussels with whiskey, sort of an ingredient near to where the thing's growing. And it's delicious. And I just flambe. There's so many flavours you can add to it. But what I do is I make the base, add a bit of whiskey, flambe it, put the lid on, put the mussels in, put the lid on and let them steam in it. And they take 2 or 3 minutes to open. As once they're open, they're done. And then lift them out and then just reduce the sauce if you want to, add a splash of creme fraiche to it or just as it is. Or even, I don't cook much with cream, but something like creme fraiche, which is lower fat than cream, is a good option.
When I started looking through the book, you deal with cod and the sort of white fish group. And I was very pleased to see that the very first fish that you deal with, fish alternative, is coley.
Right.
Because that's one of my favourites.
Is it?
And it's so, it was when I did start cooking more fish at home, coley was the first place that I went to because weirdly, I guess food memory's got a lot to do with this. I remember my mum buying little steaks of coley. I'm not sure whether it was from the market where I grew up or whether it was even from the supermarket. I was very small, but it was just something where, oh, there's the word coley. I like coley. I'm going to start there. And it's such a lovely fish, which is, well, in the past it's been a little bit frowned upon. I'm not really quite sure why.
Well, for many years, it was considered to be the best thing to give the dog or the cat. It was, if you went into
Right.
an old-fashioned fishmonger, they'd have a little box of cat trimming or cat flaps, and coley would very often end up there. And I think the other thing it puts the great British public didn't like was the fact that it's slightly off-white. It goes much paler when it's cooking or when it's cooked, but it's not that lovely gleaming white appearance. I think it's got more flavour than cod. It's also hugely, we have loads of it around the UK coast, predominantly up around the sort of Scotland direction and along the sort of eastern, western coast. And it's a really lovely fish. But a lot of that, the biggest consumer of coley is Germany. And they buy loads of it. And they really, really appreciate it. I think they're one of the biggest consumer of coley in Europe. But it would be lovely. It's great in things like fish pies. You get a little bit more flavour. I think cod can be a little bit watery sometimes and doesn't have the flavour, but it's that whole thing about wanting a white, flaky fish. Coley will go flaky, but it's not glistening white like cod.
Oh, you bust a few myths in the book when I was looking through it, because people always talk about, I'm sure this is generally true, about the freshness of fish. You've got to try and get that fish in your stomach as soon as it's being drawn out of the ocean. But in the case of things like whitefish, like cod, you say that actually it needs a few days just to firm up.
I think it does. Well, all fish vary, and I think cod, when it's very fresh, tends to be a bit watery. The French used to degorge it, so they'd sprinkle a little bit of salt on it just before they cook it. But I think very fresh cod isn't hugely flavoured. I think packed on ice and stored correctly, I wouldn't just put it in the fridge. It needs care, and that care is wrapped and packed on a bit of ice. It does, the flavour, I think, improves. Other fish the same. I think coley is a fish that's better eaten fresh, very fresh actually. Whiting's another one. With coley and whiting, they taste brilliant in the first 3 or 4 days, and then they lose some of their sort of attraction, if you think, and they don't go off, but there's just the flavour's not there. So, but cod definitely is one. The other one, of course, is Dover sole. That definitely needs to be sitting around for a day or two in order for it to firm up. It's quite just flavourless when you first eat it. So this whole thing and the obsession we have of having fish straight out of the water isn't always the case. And things like herring and mackerel and sardines, you want to get them as fresh as you can when they're still in that state of rigor mortis and rigid. That's when the flavour's going to be good. So with the oily fish, they've got oil throughout the flesh. They want to be eaten very fresh. So everything is slightly different depending on the fish, the way it's been handled and the way it's been stored and where it's come from. Loads of different things. And the time of year, of course, as well.
Yes, getting things in season. I suppose that's maybe one of those things that maybe, again, puts people off who maybe flick through a cookery book, they decide I'm going to cook that recipe, and they go to the fishmonger, and then the fish isn't there.
Yeah.
Because it's the wrong season, for example. And you've got to kind of be a bit more open-minded, I think, when you walk into the fishmonger and just go, okay, let's see what's here. You need to kind of work in a slightly different way when wanting to cook fish, unless it is things like cod and haddock, which are going to be there in some form all year round. But yeah, if you want to do some pilchard Cornish sardines, we're supposed to say these days.
Pilchard, just not a great name, is it? But and actually, a pilchard is a large sardine. A sardine officially is about 15 centimetres and under, and pilchard's over that size. So it's normally just the size. But Cornish sardines works just as well. It's asking the fishmonger in the right way. And I think if, say to somebody, I really like cod, have you got an alternative? They should. They'd be keen to encourage people to try different things. I was very encouraged because coley can be quite tricky to get, certainly in the south. But I went up to Lancashire when they have the fabulous Booths. I love Booths supermarket. At Booths, they have coley on their counter on a regular basis. And I think with Booths, there's a supplier up in Fleetwood Market that supplies them with a lot of product. And actually we managed to persuade them to take a recipe for coley to have in store so that customer could, I think it was one of the fish pie, and I used coley for that. But a white textured fish and a sort of flaky fish, and if you ask for that, you've got so many varieties rather than naming the fish. Interestingly, though, Neil, I did feel that going into a book that just mentions all these sort of unfamiliar fish was a mistake. I felt like what I needed to do was talk warmly about cod and haddock and other species of fish which we're more familiar with, and then say, well, these are the alternatives to it. So you pick up a book and you go, a cod, I know about that. But if you pick up a book and you start talking about coley, pollock and other things, people put it back on the shelf because they don't know what the fish is. So it was there to just try and encourage people to try things.
And I think you've done a really good job of it, I have to say. Each chapter starts with something familiar. There's a way in for everybody, for each one. And shellfish and things like squid, octopus, cuttlefish, things that people are really very squeamish about. I think you've managed to walk people through it, describe why it's good, look at the alternatives, and yeah, it was really encouraging. And the most important thing, CJ, about a cookbook is that I wanted to cook from it, which is the most important thing. And then a great variety of stuff. You got lovely sort of curries in there, coconut curries. But it was nice to see. I like to cook my traditional food, so it was nice to see things like potted shrimp in there, cockles and lava bread.
Yeah.
So it was really nice diversity, not just of fish, but of cuisines too.
Well, that was the trip around the UK coast that Steve and I had such fun doing. And I wanted to look at, the favourite things, and what was popular. Interestingly, you also asked me about farmed fish.
Yeah, that's another one that people worry about, isn't it? That people think, no, I can't have farm fish. It's so damaging to the environment. It's irresponsible and things like that. But of course, like everything we've talked about so far, it's not as simple as that.
It's not. And I think if we didn't embrace farmed fish, we would be struggling because there's not enough wild fish to go round. So if we really do pick up the mantra of eating 2 portions of fish every week, we do need to embrace farmed fish. And I don't know if you realise this, but at least 60% of the fish we now consume has been farmed. Salmon, as a typical example. The Atlantic salmon, you can find people that will land wild fish, but the expense, and there are issues surrounding that. The farmed alternative is very good. Now, when it comes to farming, Steve and I went over to Ireland to do an organic farm in Northern Ireland called Glenarm, which is a very special place. And they farm it organically. And farming organically is really challenging. It costs a lot more than just putting a fish in a pond and letting it get on with it. You have to follow all the procedures of organic food and that sort of thing. And I think when it comes to farming, you're looking for some form of certification. So in order to go into a shop and look at, say, farmed salmon, but there are things like the Aquaculture Stewardship Council, which will have done an audit on that particular farm. There's another one called BAP, which is Best Aquaculture Practices. There's a number of these different organisations that will go in and audit some of these farms. And I think we can eat a lot of this salmon. I always say to people, there's the good, the bad, the ugly, and there's some very good. And I think it's just understanding and questioning. This is one thing that supermarkets do very well because they're very good at making sure that they're providing something that has been, carefully and responsibly farmed. But if you think if we farm everything else and we are relying very carefully on wild fish, so farmed fish has got to fit in there. And it's fairly new. I suppose, we've been farming carp since the Middle Ages.
True.
But things like salmon's a new thing, and it's a developing industry, and they're trying to develop it in such a way that it's not damaging. So I think there were so many things when I wrote the Fish Bible. There were so many things back in sort of 30 odd years ago that have now been addressed. It's like the chemicals they use, it's the colorants they used to use, so loads of different things. And those have been addressed because the industry has listened to what's been said. So I'm very happy to eat farmed salmon. So
good. No, that's good to know. It's really good to know. If it's okay, just quickly talk about Billingsgate Market, because it's where your school is situated, and it's going to be shelved in a couple of years, along with Smithfield Market in London. I just wanted to know how you feel about that, because obviously you've got an extremely good view of the whole fishing industry, more so than probably anybody else in the country. So I was just wondering what your feelings are about Billingsgate closing, because it's been such an important market for centuries.
Well, it's not closing completely, it's moving. So the landlords currently are the City of London Corporation, and they have been for a long time. And they're the landlords of the 3 big city markets. So you've got Smithfield, which is obviously meat, poultry and game. You have also got Spitalfields, which is fruit and veg. That's up in Hackney Marshes. And then you've got Billingsgate. And I think the expense and everything else, they decided to pull out of the markets. But the merchants are not going to end there. They're looking at finding a new site, a new landlord, and it's looking very, very promising for them to be moving in somewhere in 2028. So it won't be the end of Billingsgate. It will be reborn somewhere else, possibly as New Billingsgate. I don't know what they're going to call it yet. And I certainly know that they're interested in having some sort of training facility there for both butchers and fishmongers. I think both Billingsgate and Smithfield may well merge into a space together. It's not absolutely confirmed. I'm not concerned that it's just all gone. I think it's going to continue. It's got such a history and such an important part of London.
Because it's one of those things, the way we eat food and trade food has changed so much. So I was wondering, is there, because I'm annoyed about it, because being a historian, it's like, I like things to just carry on, because especially things like this. But then I also think, well, with my 21st century hat on, things have changed, and maybe the purpose has to change with it, for it to keep relevant. We're kidding ourselves if we think traditional things stay the same. They don't. They always have to adapt to the modern world. We just don't really notice or don't like to admit it. But it's a shame. It's a shame it's got to go. Is your school going to be moving with it? Are you safe at your site?
They're talking about a training facility, and that's definitely a key part of it. So, and I think it'll just be newer and better, and they'll be running apprenticeships, and it's a slow burn. And you're absolutely right. Things do move on. People buy a lot of things online. 100 years ago, Billingsgate, you probably know this as a historian, but 100 years ago, Billingsgate was the largest fish market in the UK. And it was predominantly filled with product that came from around the UK coast and a little bit of Mediterranean fish, I suspect, but it was predominantly UK product. And over the last 100 years, we've got farming going on. We also have air freighting. So we get a lot of different species. The quantity, and because the major retailers have grown hugely in the last 100 years, they sell a lot of fish. So the market now is not the largest fish market in the UK, but it is the largest inland fish market. And what makes this market very special is the fact that we have a huge range of species that come in from all around the world. So the largest fish market's in Peterhead, and that's to do with tonnage and what's coming in. And they predominantly sell what's landed into the UK and landed through Peterhead Market. What we have at Billingsgate is product being flown into Heathrow, and some of that product, either frozen or fresh, comes into the market. So on a really good 6-week cycle, I reckon we have probably 150, 160 species of fish here, whereas around the UK coast, we probably have about 60 species that have just landed. So it's a big difference. Less tonnage, but more species. That's the big change. And of course, 100 years ago, we had a high street fishmongers, which you hardly see many around now. We have McFisheries, hundreds of those stores around the UK. I think, things have changed, but it's a pity. The Museum of London is always really interested in what's going on here because there's the history of it. And, Billingsgate's got a history that's connected to the Fishmongers Company going back over 750 years now. So as a historian, you must love that. Absolutely love it.
There's not many of these things around where you can have a direct connection going back to, or even 300 years ago. So it's just nice to know that just some things haven't changed, or they've kept evolving and changing, but there's just that one thread connecting it. It's very satisfying.
Well, we still get visits from the Lord Mayor. He comes down once a year, and there's a tradition where he comes down with somebody from Tower Hamlets, and they're given a whole salmon. And he comes down here for breakfast with his 2 sheriffs, which is obviously a huge part of London. And that's still very traditional. And that is set up and organised by the City of London. I love that because my great-grandfather was a sheriff back in 1916. So he would have, in those days, would have gone to the old market to have a look round. They do lots of trips to support the city. So lots of history there. And I think that's one of the things the merchants one reason why they don't want to see it go is because it's got such a root in the city itself.
I didn't realise this again until reading your book, that as a regular punter, you can go in after a certain time anyway, after the major trading's gone, the big trading, and come and buy some fish yourself and see that variety for yourself.
The market opens at 4 a.m. You can come in at 4 a.m. But as it's a wholesale market, the merchants are more inclined to look after their wholesale customers. So they're very busy at that time of the day. But you can come in and look and buy. You just might get short, sharp shift if they're trying to move pallet loads. But there's no restriction coming in earlier, not coming in at 4. When I have visitors to the market, I do take escorted visits round and show people the species. I don't like to do it much before 6, apart from the fact I have to get up early and I live in Kent. But also we end up, they're very busy and they're trying to move fish, you end up blocking their shop window in effect. So I don't like to be down there too early, but I have to be early enough in order to catch the fish or see the fish.
Yes, indeed. Hey, it's almost time to wrap up. Before you go, CJ, how can people find out more about you, your school, your writing?
Well, you can Google me. I've written several books on fish. This is, I think, the one that I love the most because it has allowed me to have my own voice. Whereas when I was at Leeds, I was writing under the Leith umbrella. I did a book for Dawn and Kindersley, and I was writing under their umbrella. I did a Billingsgate Market cookbook, which was when I was running the school, was under that umbrella. And with this, Merlin Unwin said, just talk about what you love about fish. There's lots of little information about sort of how I got involved in it and some of the experiences I've had. I mean, obviously very passionate about British coastal fish, but I've travelled a lot and worked abroad a lot and worked with lots of other species. You'd find me on Google. I've also got a new website that is very sluggish. It's coming up soon. I've got a great chat that's working on it. And it's called CJ on Seafood. That's the new website with some of the courses that I'm going to be delivering. And if you Google CJ Jackson Fish and Shellfish, you'll come up with the Dawn and Kindersley books I've worked with in the past and one or two other things I've done. So I also did a fantastic book called The Ration Book Diet with some historians that was talking about rationing in the Second World War. There's a tiny bit of fish in there. It took us a little bit, but it's normally about everything else. But most of my writing has been about seafood, and I'm still passionate about it. I'm still excited about it. I still love Billingsgate Market. And my husband glazes over when I talk about fish now because he knows he's going to get a full faceful of
your
fish
long-suffering husband.
Well, he's lovely. Yes, he does. But he likes his meat. So,
CJ, thank you very much for sparing the time to come and talk to me about this. It's been very inspiring.
Excellent. Well, I do hope you continue enjoying recipes from the book. And I'm so glad you're cooking. I've got lots of friends who said they've cooked recipes. I keep getting these images of people sending me pictures of what they've cooked and their end result. So that's been fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, CJ. There are lots of links in the show notes, as per usual, to CJ's books, including The Great British Seafood Revival and, as was mentioned in that conversation, The Ration Book Diet. There's a link to the Billingsgate Seafood School and their Insta account, plus some information about Billingsgate Market itself. Remember, I posted a recipe on the blog for kedgeree recently, so check that out if you haven't already. And there's a link to a recent episode of A is for Apple, where the subject was seafood, and Sam Bilton, Alessandra Pino and I talked about cod, cockles and caviar. Remember, I want those questions, comments and queries for the now traditional end-of-season postbag special, so do you have any fond or not so fond memories of eating and enjoying fish as a child? Do you remember McFisheries? Or do you have some nuggets of fish-related food history to share? Well, please drop me an email, neil@britishfoodhistory.com. Or leave a comment on the accompanying blog post or on the Spotify app or on the YouTube or on social media. I'm easy to find on X, Blue Sky and Instagram. Links are in the show notes. Also, if you've got anything to add to or say about any previous episode from this season or any previous season, or if you've spotted some food history in the news, come across a strange recipe, or just have a food history question, let me know about those too. But anyway, it's time to go. Until next time, cheerio.